Good evening. Welcome to a video tutorial on how to create a website using Flash. We'll be using CS5 in this tutorial, and I'll give you a basic idea of how to make a navigational website using Flash. Now, what I'm going to be working with or trying to show you is this. So think of this as a home page. Links up the top, goes to various buttons. It has also embedded movie clips which jump through. Now, some of my work is contained there, which I'll show you in later tutorials how to do. For this, we will be using Flash CS5. Due to some compatibility issues and my trusty old PC crashing on me, I don't have a hard copied .fla of this file, so I'm not going to be able to show you exactly what I've done to get the various effects happening, any of the tweens for the animations, things like that. I will show you basic design principles of just the more technical side of things and how to get your your Flash website navigationable. There's some very good Flash websites out there. Just punch into Google Flash websites and it will bring up a fair few. So let's put this off to the side and open up Flash. When it pops up. Alright, File, New. I created this in ActionScript 2, so I will show you the ActionScript 2 principles for it. Here we see the basic layout for Flash. I am using CS5, so it's laid out slightly different to previous versions, but everything will be the same. The very first thing you want to do is set up your stage. So I increased my stage to about 700 pixels by 600 pixels, I think, but you can make whatever you want. Stage color was changed to black, obviously. And now we begin. Tip, label all your frames. So I've called the very first one of mine background. And it will contain all background elements. So everything you see here, such as the About Me text in the back that changes depending on what page you're on. I've included the page title to the side, also the footer here. Ignore that email address, I've recently updated it. Details will be below if you want to contact me for anything. Buttons are held separately on a different layer, and I'll explain why a bit later on, as well as all the content areas. So, background contains our images. Images just sorry, bit of a problem with the microphone there. Yep, so as I was saying, background contains all the images, everything's static as such, that doesn't really interact with the user. So you'll see that on the graphic design page, flicking through this element, it is not on the background. It is in its own separate layer. So, jump back into Flash. First of all, we want to set up some basic scripting to control the motion of the movie clip. Now, Flash works as a constant playthrough, so you get animations happening. To control that progression of the timeline, we need to add some actions in. So, right-click on your frame, select Actions. As we're using ActionScript 2 and not ActionScript 3 in this tutorial, it has the ability to place code not only in frames but also in instances, so button instances we'll be working with. This is very handy for quick coding if you're not using it for big extensive websites or even Flash games it can be extended to. So first thing we need to do is initialize a stop function. In Flash, everything needs to be followed by the semicolon, and you can pass in parameters inside the brackets between a function. Function name here is stop. Now it's a predefined word for the ActionScript library, and it has its own meaning, so we don't need to define anything other than stop. Close that, get it out of the way. Now we're also going to want to label this very first frame in the properties. home. Labeling it as home will give it an instance name, similar to a button having an instance name. So this being home, we can set up a button to link to home. The way we're going to do that is by using a series of go to and stop functions. Now to do that, we want to set up a basic button. So let's give a button background of red, give it some text, we'll call it home. Change that to white, reduce the size slightly. Now you can place that on top of the home. One thing I should mention is using everything in its own layer to distribute buttons in the background is also a good idea. So before I did that, I should have created a separate layer and called it buttons. So I'll just select both of these, copy them off the stage, create a new layer, call it buttons. Navigation is also handy, whatever you want to use. Right click, paste in place. Now, we want in Flash CS5 it has by default set any entered text up as classic text. And it also goes to import. We want to change that to static text type. The use of dynamic and input is used inside movie clips for various features, like if you're making an applet that will search on the internet, or dynamic text would be used for a counter of sorts. So you could have a timer counting down in a game. For us, because we don't want the text to do anything except sit there, we're going to create a static text. Select the home text that we have there and the button. Right click on it and convert it to a symbol. We're going to name this home_btn. But the type of symbol needs to be a button. If we were using ActionScript 3, we could label it as a movie clip and use event handlers to register a click on that movie clip and do something. But as we're using ActionScript 2, we'll stick to buttons. Press OK. So now this is essentially a button. Pretty boring, so why don't we double click on that and give it some better features. Here in the timeline it has an up, over, down and hit parameters for this button. So over, if we create a new keyframe, can change properties or add properties to this button depending on where the mouse is. So as soon as we mouse over it, it will do something. For me, I think I want to change the color of the text to blue. You can do whatever you like to these, add in some fancy effects in tweens, such as I've done in my portfolio here. So when you mouse over mine, you get a float-in line underneath the word that glows and moves about. Just adds a bit more interactivity for the user. For ease of use in this one, we'll just change that property. So, show you what happens now. Mouse over this button and the text color changes. That's all well and good, but when we click that button, it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. So let's go to the background and punch in a bit of text just to show you how this works. Call it home. Doesn't matter about this type of text, we're not going to be doing anything with it. The next thing I want to do is create another frame for each of these. So select the 2 points at 5 and insert keyframes. Now, ignore this dotted line, it just refers to this frame having a name that was concealed behind the frame length not being long enough between the next keyframe. This flag indicates there is a frame name, and the little A indicates there is action. So the action that we had there was the stop function. That is imperative because without it, it will just play through the scene, and I'll show you what happens if we take one of these out. So I'll take out this line of code, and let's see, draw a block at the end. Play this movie, and you see it playing through. To control that playhead, as we did before, right-click Actions, and enter your stop code. So I'll take out these slashes, and that code will be input. So now it just stays there. The next thing we want to do in creating one of these Flash websites in navigation purposes is enter another layer. And we're going to call it about. Whoops, I've named the wrong layer. Layer 3 is a new one, we'll call it about. We're going to insert a new keyframe, and I'll get rid of these other ones that aren't being used at the moment. Okay. Now, I'm going to want the home button to keep up with everything. The button's going to be there on every screen. So let's go to about, change this text to about. You'll notice with my portfolio here that when you click on a new button, it animates in. So I have just set that up with basic tweens. Now I'm assuming that you know what tweens are if you're searching for this type of video. If you don't, have a check later on. I'll upload some tutorials on how to use tweens effectively in creating a website. So see it again, I have the contact title fly in, I have these text blocks zoom in, and finally I have a little tagline or an image come in. To do that, it is with tweens, which will be shown in a different tutorials I just mentioned. But to get the whole motion happening and jump in between different screens, we're going to need some code. To do this, we're going to initialize our first code on the home button. Now, right click, actions. We're going to use on event handlers, similar to on event handlers using ActionScript 3, and this will be a light introduction for you for when I do show you how to use ActionScript 3 in